Tyre Nichols was a young man with dreams, aspirations, and a zest for life. He was more than just a name in the headlines. He was a vibrant soul with a future full of promise. A father, a son, a friend. He was deeply loved by his family and cherished by his friends. He loved skateboarding and photography, passions that allowed him to express his creativity and joy. He had a bright smile that could light up a room, a smile that reflected his kind and gentle nature. But on January 7, 2023, Tyre's light was extinguished in a senseless act of violence, brutally, senselessly at the hands of those sworn to protect and serve the community. It began with a traffic stop, a moment that should have been routine and uneventful, a routine encounter that should have ended with a ticket, maybe a warning, and Tyre driving away. Instead, it escalated into a nightmare, a chaotic and tragic series of events. Tyre was dragged from his car, beaten and pepper-sprayed, his cries for help ignored. He cried out for his mother, his voice hoarse with pain and terror, but no one came to his aid. The officers, 5 in all, showed no mercy, no compassion. They punched, kicked, and beat Tyre with batons, their actions brutal and unforgiving. He lay on the pavement, broken and helpless, his body battered and bruised. Still, they continued their assault, relentless and unyielding. They treated him not as a human being, but as a threat to be neutralized, devoid of empathy. 3 days later, Tyre died in a hospital bed, surrounded by the grief of his loved ones. His injuries were too severe, his body unable to recover from the trauma inflicted upon him. His family, left to grieve a life stolen, demanded justice, their hearts heavy with sorrow. The city of Memphis, and indeed the nation, watched and waited, hoping for accountability and change. On May 7, 2025, the justice Tyre's family desperately sought slipped through their fingers. 3 former Memphis police officers, Tadarius Bean, Demetrius Haley, and Justin Smith, were acquitted of all state charges. Second-degree murder, aggravated assault, aggravated kidnapping, all gone. The courtroom, filled with Tyre's loved ones and concerned citizens, erupted in gasps and sobs. How could this be? The evidence, much of it captured on chilling body camera footage, seemed irrefutable. Yet the jury remained unconvinced. The acquittal sent shockwaves across the country. Protests erupted in cities large and small. Outrage, raw and palpable, filled the air. How many more Black lives would be lost before true accountability was achieved? The verdict felt like a punch to the gut, a stark reminder of the deep-seated inequities that permeate the justice system. It felt like a betrayal. The prosecution painted a damning portrait of police brutality, highlighting the systemic issues that plague law enforcement. They argued that the officers, fueled by a toxic mix of power and prejudice, crossed the line from law enforcement to lawlessness, abandoning their duty to protect and serve. They meticulously presented the evidence piece by piece, building a compelling case that left little room for doubt. The body camera footage, graphic and disturbing, showed the officers' relentless assault on Tyre, capturing every harrowing moment of the encounter. Medical experts testified to the horrific extent of Tyre's injuries consistent with a brutal and sustained beating that left him fighting for his life. Desmond Mills Jr., one of the officers involved, took the stand for the prosecution, his testimony a pivotal moment in the trial. He admitted to hitting Tyre with a baton, his voice laced with regret, a rare moment of vulnerability in the courtroom. His testimony offered a glimpse into the culture of silence and fear that often pervades police departments, a culture that can enable such acts of violence. The prosecution argued that the officers' actions were not those of officers following protocol, but of individuals who had lost their moral compass. They were the actions of men who had lost all sense of humanity, who saw Tyre not as a citizen deserving of respect and rights, but as a target to be subdued at any cost. The defense, in stark contrast, sought to shift the blame. They argued that Tyre's own actions, his alleged resistance and possible drug use, contributed to the escalation of the situation. They claimed that the officers, faced with a perceived threat, acted accordingly. They pointed to Tyre's initial attempt to flee the scene as evidence of his noncompliance. They questioned the medical examiner's findings, suggesting that Tyre's pre-existing health conditions may have played a role in his death. Character witnesses, colleagues and friends of the officers were called to the stand. They spoke of the officers' good character, their professionalism, their commitment to serving the community. They painted a picture that clashed sharply with the brutal reality captured on video. The defense's strategy was clear: humanize the officers, demonize the victim. It was a tactic as old as time, and in this case it proved tragically effective. Section 5. A pattern of brutality, examining police conduct. The acquittal of the 3 officers in the Tyre Nichols case is not an isolated incident. It is part of a larger, deeply troubling pattern of police brutality, particularly against Black and brown people, that plagues our nation. From Rodney King to Eric Garner to George Floyd to Breonna Taylor, the names of the victims ring out like a mournful chorus. Each case, a stark reminder of the systemic racism and implicit bias that permeate law enforcement. The statistics are staggering. Black Americans are 3 times more likely to be killed by police than white Americans. They're also more likely to be stopped, searched, and arrested, even for minor offenses. This is not a coincidence. It is the result of decades of policies and practices that have disproportionately targeted and marginalized communities of color. Section 6. The weight of the badge, accountability, and reform. The acquittal in the Tyre Nichols case underscores the urgent need for police reform. For too long, officers have operated with impunity, their actions rarely scrutinized, their abuses rarely punished. We need to rethink the role of police in our society. We need to invest in community-based solutions to crime that do not rely on force or intimidation. We need to demilitarize the police, to strip them of the weapons of war that have no place on our streets. We need to hold officers accountable for their actions, to ensure that those who violate the public trust are held responsible. The weight of the badge is heavy. It is a symbol of authority, but it should also be a symbol of accountability, of justice, of protection. Section 7. Unequal justice, race, and the law. The Tyre Nichols case, like so many before it, lays bare the uncomfortable truth about race and the law in America. The justice system, designed to be blind, too often sees color. It sees Black and brown people as threats, as criminals, as less than human. This is not a new phenomenon. It is the legacy of slavery, of Jim Crow, of mass incarceration. It is a legacy that continues to this day, woven into the very fabric of our society. We cannot address police brutality without addressing the systemic racism that fuels it. We need to dismantle the structures of white supremacy that permeate every aspect of our lives. We need to create a society where everyone, regardless of the color of their skin, is treated with dignity and respect. Section 8. A community mourns, a nation grapples. In the wake of the acquittal, the city of Memphis found itself grappling with a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, frustration, exhaustion. Tyre Nichols' death, a tragedy captured on video for the world to see, had reopened old wounds, exposed deep-seated divisions. Yet, amidst the pain, there was also a glimmer of hope. The community, diverse in its makeup but united in its grief, came together to demand justice, to call for change. Across the nation, people marched, protested, and spoke out against police brutality and racial injustice. They organized, mobilized, and demanded that their voices be heard. The fight for justice is a marathon, not a sprint. It is a fight that requires unwavering commitment, unwavering courage, unwavering hope. Section 9. The long road ahead, seeking justice, demanding change. The acquittal in the Tyre Nichols case is a setback, a painful reminder of the long road ahead. It underscores the systemic issues that continue to plague our justice system, issues that cannot be ignored or swept under the rug. But it is not the end of the story. This moment, though disheartening, is a call to action, a rallying cry for all who believe in justice and equality. The fight for justice continues. It is a fight that requires persistence, resilience, and unwavering commitment. The demand for change grows louder. Across the nation, voices are rising, demanding accountability and reform. We must honor Tyre's memory by continuing to fight for a world where his death is not in vain. A world where such tragedies are not a common occurrence. A world where Black lives matter. Where every individual is treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their race. A world where justice prevails. Where the scales of justice are balanced and fair. We must channel our anger into action. Our frustration must fuel our determination to create change. We must hold our elected officials accountable. They must hear our voices and act upon our demands. We must demand that they enact meaningful police reform, address systemic racism, and create a more just and equitable society for all. This is not just a request. It is a necessity. The road ahead will be long, and the journey will be arduous, but every step forward is a step toward justice. But we must not give up hope. Hope is the light that guides us through the darkest times. For in the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. Let us be the force that bends it.